So, the original teaching that was laid out by the Buddha was that it is possible to escape the suffering of the world. And he laid this out in the Four Noble Truths, which were life, suffering exists, or it translates better as dissatisfaction with the world exists. That dissatisfaction is caused by attachment. There is a path for breaking that attachment, and that path is the Noble Eightfold Path, which is basically a set of moral guidelines and instructions on meditation that will lead you to enlightenment. And basically, this enlightened state is removal from existence. The existence that we know is a cyclical existence where we die and are reborn continuously, and our suffering passes on continuously. And what we're seeking is what the Buddha sought was a way out of that, and a way to true bliss, which is nirvana, basically, which translates as extinction. So you're wiping out all of your suffering and negative karma that you've accrued through the millennia. Okay, so the 5 precepts that you take are not killing, no intoxicating substances, which is interpreted different ways. Some people won't drink caffeine, whereas some people will allow themselves a certain amount of, a glass of wine with dinner or whatever. You can't take anything that isn't yours, so no stealing, no lying, no speaking something that isn't true, and this also extends to gossip or idle chatter, and then no, it's loosely defined, improper sexual relations. Buddhists have a complicated view of reincarnation, but they definitely believe that it exists. It's very different because another core understanding of Buddhism is that there is no permanent soul. There is no soul. There's this principle called anatman. So Hindus believe in Atman, which is like this eternal soul that is basically your ongoing personality. It passes from one life to the next. Well, Atman is the absence of that. So we have no permanent essence. So the thing that is passed on, it's kind of difficult to understand. The Buddha never was able to lay it out clearly. Kind of avoided doing it, actually. He said it was like if you have a line of candles. Whenever a person is reborn, it's like passing the flame from one candle to the next candle. You can't say that anything about that first candle was passed to the next one, but the first candle caused the next candle to catch fire. The goal of Buddhist practice is to attain nirvana, or the goal of some Buddhist practice. It's a little bit complicated, but which is basically removal from our existence. Okay, the word nirvana means to extinguish. So it's like the word for, if you put out a fire, that's what you would do. That's what that word means. So it's like ceasing to exist, because our karma causes us to continually exist. This is the nature of karma. Karma is like cause and effect, right? Mm-hmm. So in Buddhism, it's like the law of preservation of energy, where energy is never destroyed; it just keeps being passed from one thing to another. This is the way it is with karma. You just keep existing, right? So as we go through our cycles of reincarnation, we move from one world to the next. So there are hells. There are all different kinds of hells. There are lower and higher, worse and better hells. So moving up these categories of existence, and you could move into being like a hungry ghost, which are these like vile beings who are basically live this awful tortured existence where they have these really tiny mouths and these huge bellies. They're just so hungry. They live their life in such hunger, but their mouths are so small that anything that they eat just rips their throat open on the way down. So even if they eat the smallest speck of food, it just causes horrible pain on its way down.
Bummer.
Yeah, pretty awful. Then the next step up, then hungry ghosts who acquire positive karma enough to escape their existence are then reborn as like animals. And so animals working their way up become humans. And then humans who are good will then be rewarded by being reborn in celestial realms or in heavens. And there's different varieties of those. And what you might consider, some people might consider gods, these sort of celestial beings, have different supernatural powers, but most of them live in a world of basically just pleasure. Like they don't experience the same kind of suffering that humans do. But Buddhists say that the human birth is the most fortunate kind of birth because we have the perfect balance for reaching enlightenment, for understanding the Buddhist principles. Because the celestial beings don't experience suffering in the same way that we do. They don't see the direct impacts of their actions. They don't suffer as a result of their actions. So they don't understand that they can't understand that attachment will cause their suffering. Whereas animals and hungry ghosts, they don't have the intellectual capacity to make that realization. So they experience suffering, but they can't understand that their suffering is caused by their behavior, by their actions. So humans, we have the perfect balance of those two features to be able to reach enlightenment. So what you want to do is be human. And the most fortunate thing, according to Buddhists, is to be born in a Buddhist country. Being born in the West, in America, where we have such great. It's almost like living in a heaven, being born in America. And this is some Buddhists do apply this sort of idea where being born in a third world country where you're going to be dealing with starvation and war and all these things is like being born in a hell realm where you can't because your needs are so apparent, you can't make the kind of commitment, you can't make the kind of realizations that would be required to achieve enlightenment, whereas in America we live with such opulence here that we also don't make the connection of our suffering and our behavior. Sometimes negative behaviors are reinforced rather than being punished. It's a vast religion with so many different teachings. And like I was saying, there's something for everybody in there. But that also means that it's really complicated, and these ideas of one simple answer to any question, it just doesn't exist. So I could talk all night, but I wouldn't necessarily get you any closer